Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my humble, windy home in Livingston, Montana. And what date do I have today, just for the heck of it, is November 2 of 2020. Okay, I got another story I'm going to tell, and if you don't like my story, tell them, well, that's okay, because you probably got something better to do anyway. But this is another story of when I was in the service, United States Army. And this particular story here is kind of hard for me to say, kind of hard for me to tell, because I'm afraid I'm going to offend somebody. And if I offend somebody, here's what I got to say about it. Good. I'm glad. I hope I do. Well, I shouldn't say I hope I do, but if I do, I do, and if I don't, I don't. Okay. Like I've said in some of my other stories, I had to finish out my career, if you will, my tenure, my tour with the United States Army at Fort Lewis, Washington in the 9th Infantry Division. I had to put in another year and a half after Vietnam, to get my time in so I could get gone. Because that's all I was praying for, was the day I could get loose from that outfit. Well, anyway, I made friends with this guy. This isn't going to really matter because nobody's going to know what I'm talking about anyway, but his name was Marshall. That's what his last name was Marshall. And he was exactly the same rank as me. Salty old E4. He'd been around a while, and I think he'd been in the service a couple more years longer than I had and whatnot have you. He was kind of a clodhopper of a guy, but friendly enough, and me and him become beer drinking buddies, and we'd go, he had an old Volkswagen, I remember that, and we even managed to take leave and drive that Volkswagen all the way from Fort Lewis, Washington, clear to Polson, Montana. We took leave for a couple of days and made the trip, and actually I dropped him off in Hamilton, Montana, because they had a Job Corps there, because he used to be in the Job Corps there in Hamilton, Montana, and he knew the old boy that run the Job Corps and whatnot have you, and he had a lot of stories to tell me, and he let me take my his Volkswagen, and go on and visit my folks, then come back and pick him up and go back to the fort. That's just to show you that we were, pretty good buddies, and we went out on a few, drunken escapades and a few things. And as far as I'm always spitting all over myself. As far as his sexual orientation goes, I never did give it any thought. There was no reason to give it any thought, He didn't have a girlfriend, I didn't have a girlfriend, but then back in them days, it was very, very hard for us GIs to get girlfriends, especially because of the Vietnam War. A lot of girls didn't like us Vietnam veterans or anybody to do with the Vietnam War. Well, anyway, this one in particular, I think it was a Friday night or something. I don't think it was during the week. I tried not to drink too much during the week because I had duty and all that stuff, and I'd save all that kind of stuff for the weekend, but me and old Marshall, we got us some beer, and because back in them days, you could go to what they called the United States government package store. That's what they called it, it's part of the PX system, and since it was booze, there was no tax on booze if you were buying it from the government. Bet a lot of you don't know that. Well, there's some of you that probably do. And so, you could get, I remember you could get a case of Olympia for, say, $3.25 or something, So if you got down where you were getting real broke, all you had to do is just run over there to the package store and grab you a couple cases, and that'd carry you through the weekend, Well, we were doing something along these lines. I remember that all too well. And we were sitting in one of the barracks rooms. As a matter of fact, I think, if I remember right, I think it was Marshall's room. In fact, I know it was. And we're sitting there, and it's boring. There's nothing going on. No TV, no music, no nothing. We're just, just sucking them down and getting more stupid and more bored as we went along. Can you understand the scene? Because that's what was going on, one of them deals where you're sitting there counting the cinder blocks on the wall, or some ridiculous thing like that. So finally, I'm sitting on a bunk, just sitting sideways on a bunk, and I just kind of put my head up against the old cinder block wall there, because most of those barracks were made out of cinder blocks and wood, and like that. And I just kind of pretended like I went to sleep. Don't ask me why. I mean, that's how bored I was. I was waiting for something to happen, I guess, So I'm sitting there like this. Well, I'm not pretending to be asleep. I'm kind of resting my eyeballs, and like that, and I actually had plenty of beer, or probably too much, but I wasn't too stupid. I remember that. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting there, just like, you have to watch my hands here. And all of a sudden, this is the part that is hard for me to tell, but I don't care. I'm going to bruise through this any way I can. But I felt these creepy little hands, only it was down here on towards my hips, my hip area, on top of my thighs. And these creepy little hands were coming along like this, and I'm thinking to myself, what in the hell is going on? And that buddy of mine, old Marshall character, was sitting right beside me on the bunk, and I thought to myself, well, what in the hell is this fucking fool? Just didn't mean to say that. This fool's doing. Strike that. I'll get kicked off of YouTube. I don't care. But anyway, when the creepy fingers got to the buttons of my fly on my pants, this is about the time that, I pretty much, went into orbit. I could just remember just popping up like this and just taking both of my hands like this and just swinging them over and getting this maggot right by the neck and just standing him right up against the wall. Do you understand what I mean? I mean, I had his neck firmly, I had his whole entire being right in my hands. And if he was going to say anything wrong, he was more than likely going to die. Because back in my man's army, straight up, it ain't like it is now. Back in those days, being a homosexual, a queer, whatever you want to call it, because by starting on the names, somebody's going to get all mad and everything, like a faggot, Being any of these kind of things like this was an automatic. If they caught you and whatever have you, it was an automatic dishonorable discharge. Simple as that. Because when you went into the United States Army, you signed a contract with the military, with the government, and one of the parts of the contract was stating emphatically that you were not a homosexual, whatever have you, you weren't a professional pole climber. Yeah, I can see somebody, that's real funny. Well, whatever. Anyway, I get this guy right by the neck, and I have him, kind of rattling his head a little bit, getting that cinder block, and I says, Marshall, I said, what in the hell are you doing? And he started to make all kinds of excuses and whining and carrying on a bunch of stuff. And I said, I would have never thought that you were a faggot. I would have never thought that you were a homosexual, and all that stuff. And he was deeply humiliated, Well, if he was deeply humiliated, he shouldn't have done it. And especially with me, because he knew damn well that I more than likely wasn't the proper candidate for this kind of stuff, you know. And still to this day, I've been married for 45 years and I still don't dig it. In fact, I find that kind of stuff disgusting. Good, I've got that off my chest. I don't care. I don't care what kind of a liberal world we live in, but anyway, so I mean, I'm boiling mad by now, you know, and I got him right by the throat and all this other stuff, and pretty soon I felt him going limp, you know, and I thought, well, actually, no, I'm a little ahead of my story. I had him by the throat where he couldn't do much, and I said, Marshall, I tell you what I'm going to do. Come Monday morning, and I know this was on a weekend, it was on a Friday or Saturday night. I says, come Monday morning, me and you are going before the old man, meaning the CO, which was a captain, which was an O3, an officer, rank 3. And I says, I'm basically going to tell him that you're, a homosexual. And he automatically, not automatically, he knew from being in the military as long as he had that was an automatic honorable discharge, because you bring up charges like that, man, and it's nothing but trouble. Back in my day, they didn't screw around with deals like that. They really didn't, man. You know, if there was even just one testimony along those lines and you couldn't get out of it, chances are you were going to get that dishonorable discharge. And I remember this guy, man, he shrank clear down my legs. You know, he was holding on to my legs. He was on the floor and crying and begging and carrying on a bunch of shit and, excuse my French, but, you know, freaking out and all this stuff and begging me not to do what I told him I was going to do. And finally I got sick and tired of this stuff, and I grabbed him by the shoulders, jerked him up against that wall, and I says, I tell you what, I says, I'm going to get him to shut up and everything. I says, I will refrain from going to the old man, but you better fly as straight as an arrow. And I mean, just as straight as they come, you know, like I will, just give me a second chance, Jim, and all that stuff. Well, you know, a week or so went by and I didn't see much old Marshall. And then, you know, another week went by, and because we worked in different departments, different parts of our unit, you know. But one day, man, he come skipping down the hallway of the barracks, and he come up to me, and I'm thinking to myself, boy, now here we go with this report. You got to see what this. He goes, Jim, he says, I got something to tell you. I says, what's that? Hard to say, you know. And I was, you know, glaring at him because I'm still madder than all hell, you know. And this was about a month after I let him slide, you know, because I never did report him, you know. And he looked at me and he goes, I found Jesus. I says, no kidding. I says, good. I'm glad. I found Jesus. And he goes, yeah, and I want to tell you one other thing. I'm getting married. I says, oh, are ya? I says, to a woman? He goes, yeah, I've been dating for a month and we're going to get married. And he says, as a matter of fact, I think he tried to give me the date of the marriage and when they were going to get married and all this other stuff. And I didn't want to hear any of it, you know. And I just told him, I said, look here, fool. I said, you better just keep on flying straight and doing what you say you're doing. Keep on loving Jesus and all this other stuff, or we're still going to dance. I know some of you don't like this story. I don't care. But I know one thing, all of a sudden he wasn't homosexual. Now how does this work? See, the reason why I'm looking like that is because some people say that they're born that way and they can't help themselves. You know what I say to that? Bullshit. That's just pure crap. Ladies and gentlemen, have a nice day. Thank you for visiting me on my home here in Livingston, Montana, and we shall see you on down the trail. And adios, my friends.